What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Ham House Sports. It's Big Matt and Little Matt, and it's good to be back.
It's been a while, a couple months since we've done a video.
Probably a couple months since we've done a video. Yeah.
But we are so excited to be back. We've had a busy month of June, going to a few shows. We've got the National coming up in Cleveland, and we just wanted to jump back on to kind of catch you guys up with Ham House Sports, kind of the state of the hobby, what we're seeing from the front lines. We've been 3 shows in 3 weekends. I've got to talk to a lot of the big hobby influencers, a lot of the big vendors and dealers, and it's just really as always, it just continues to amaze me. It's just such a cool time in the hobby. A lot of new stuff going on, though. See a lot of transition. Some things are kind of happening. So we're going to talk about kind of changes in the hobby, things we're seeing and picking up on. But Matthew, first, let's just kind of catch everybody up. What's been going on with us?
Yeah, I mean, for the spring, we really didn't have any shows because we were all busy with travel baseball. You were starting your new insurance agency. And I had travel basketball, so really didn't get to go to many shows. But summer's here.
Were you depressed?
I was what?
Were you sad?
I was depressed.
Were you sad?
And I couldn't buy any cards, and I was
sports cards are stupid.
And I couldn't buy any cards, and I was a little angry. But these past 3 weeks, we've gone to 3 card shows.
He's getting back in,
and
guys.
The one show that I thought was going to be probably the worst ended up probably being the best.
That's it. So, busy spring, travel sports schedule, finishing up school. As Matthew said, new business endeavor for me. But one of the things too, Matthew, is we have pretty much over the last, 6 months to a year, focused primarily on prospecting.
Yep.
And during the middle of the season is not
the best time to do prospects.
Yeah. So you've got to have the patience thing, which is tough for some of us. But the prospecting thing is a little slower during the season, but that brings up football. Yeah. Everybody's back into football. So Matthew,
I've noticed that a lot of people that were big Bowman dealers are now getting the more football, and myself included. I've been doing a lot of football, a lot of the new case hit, prism, all that stuff, and picked up a few at the Wilmington Card Show. We'll show this a little bit later.
Okay.
We can show this a little bit later. But what are you getting like on the whole football part of the hobby now?
Yeah, so one of the things you have to recognize about the hobby is it's very seasonal. It's just like, sports itself. Like during the season, most like dealers or guys who are in the hobby, like moving cards and selling cards during the season is really not the time you want to be in that sport.
Yep.
You really have to buy in the off season or buy during season if a guy's low, but buy and then you sell with the energy going into the season. And so that is like massively apparent. Now with vintage cards are always there, but most of the sports are driven by the preseason hype. Okay. Yeah. Now, sometimes you have the situation, right? Sometimes you have the situation where you do get a team that goes into the playoffs and there's some hype, and some people like holding into that if they're confident about it. But the majority of people, the demand from the market is people buying preseason, selling preseason hype.
Desmond Ritter's a perfect example, and Brock Purdy's a perfect example.
Desmond
Ritter had more hype than Brock Purdy, and Brock Purdy was second for MVP voting last year. So it's just crazy how last year, like if you would have decided to hold, that's why it's always a good idea to sell before season, even if the player becomes Brock Purdy.
Yeah. And, again, Brock Purdy now is not going to be Brock Purdy last year, so the reality is with cards is you have to stay on top of your game, because the likelihood that a guy stays hot for a length of time is highly unlikely. So you have to capitalize when you can. And then if you really like that player, you can move back into that player or whatever. But that's not what you've been doing. You've been really focusing on this latest buzz of downtowns and kabooms.
Case hit.
So downtowns and kabooms on the football side are super liquid right now. There are so many different people that are buying them. Yep. And one of the things that's really changed the industry is the repack business.
Yes.
So there's a lot of online folks that are doing Whatnot or Fanatics or whatever it is, and they are repackaging slabs and raw cards
and
in mystery packs. And so for the consumer, it's like opening a box of wax, except they're opening Yeah, you're opening a card, but you're probably going to spend $500 just like you would spend for a hobby box. But instead of getting a box full of all these cards, you're just getting one card.
Yep.
But the repackers are smart, and they're going to leverage out their cost or lateralize out their cost. And so some of the cards they're selling for $500 might be $200 cards, but they're going to throw a couple chases in there that are going to be $1,000 cards or $1,500 cards or whatever. So the guys that are buying in are going, oh man, I'm gonna get lucky and I'm gonna hit that card. Just the same thing people do about buying packs.
Yep.
So that is changing the hobby right now, because repackers, instead of like a dealer who's trying to buy at 70% and make his margin if he sells at full comp, a repacker can build their cost in on every card, and then they can level that out by how much they sell a pack for. So they know.
So a lot of the times what repackers do is they go and pay full comps.
That's what I'm saying. So they can pay full comp because they're getting
130%.
Yeah, well, not necessarily 130, but they know they can build their cost in, so their low cards aren't going to go for low. Their high cards are going to get their number. And so that's changing the hobby. So what's going on right now is a lot of these repackers have guys buying cards for them kind of all over.
Yep.
And so with the flipper market, it used to be that you could buy on eBay and then sell on eBay and make a little bit of profit. Then it would be like, well, you could buy from somebody in person and then sell at a show if you're a vendor, and you buy at 80, you sell at 100. Or if you're buying at 80 and selling at 90 on eBay, or whatever the case might be. The repacker game has changed the marketplace, because this means that repackers are paying very strong on these case hit products.
And that leads us into the Chantilly card show, which in Chantilly, I mean, the room was huge. Like I walked in and saw, whoa, there's a lot of stuff. But in that huge room, there's maybe 3 tables with Bowman. And I was just like, and pretty much what Dad said yesterday, it was vintage and overpriced football, because these dealers were like, yep, I don't want to sell to you because I know my repack guy pays me 100. So it's tough to find any cards in the market nowadays, but when you find the cards, you can get the cards.
It's just really interesting. So from a buyer standpoint, you have to be much more educated now, and you have to understand, that there is a ton of competition for these, SPs, SSPs, and these case hits and things like that. And so you've got to be willing to pay strong. When you see a card that is a good card, you got to be willing to pay strong.
Yep.
The interesting thing about it is the football market and the baseball market are vastly different, right? Like the football market is just a hyper liquid hype market. Mm-hmm. It's guys staying liquid with cards. People are buying the quarterbacks and trying to sell them before the season, or sell them just into the season if somebody has a good week 1, the case hit thing or whatever. Baseball is more of a long game, because these prospect guys are buying these cards and holding them
for a while.
Yeah, especially the colored Bowman. So your reds, your oranges, your golds, your blues. These guys that are big into Bowman, they're buying these cards and they're sitting on them until these top prospects debut. So it becomes more difficult to find these cards coming up for sale. But a lot of the buyers on the Bowman side still treat it like it's the football. That it's this hyper liquid card. Yeah. And that's just not the case. And so what you see with Bowman is, if you can be smart with your buying and you're willing to be patient and you have a rare card, you're going to get your number. Whereas on the football side, in my opinion, it's just a quicker turn.
Yeah.
You're buying a card and you're moving it, and you're buying a card and you're moving it. And then if you get profit from like 3 or 4 deals and you want to go buy your favorite player, you can do that.
Yeah. So what I've done recently with the football is, like Big Matt said, like here are 2 I picked up yesterday out of like 10 I picked up yesterday, but you have longer arms. Walter Payton, I'm holding, and a Jalen Hurts. So Walter Payton, Big Matt's holding out, and Jalen Hurts. But downtowns. Yep. But what I've been doing is flipping the downtowns, but I was able with the profit to buy an Anthony Richardson Purple Power Prism Auto that I will be walking into the National with.
Yeah. So you've got to be savvy and willing to change with the market. That's the interesting thing too, is a lot of dealers and a lot of vendors, they want to stay with the way it was. You know what I mean? It's like you buy at 70%, you buy a big collection, and then you liquidate it at your tables. But right now, super liquid cards are just flying off the shelf. shelf. And so what happens a lot of times is these guys that are super liquid, they have these really high-end cards, they get a lot more people to their table, and they just naturally get a lot more action. And it might be smaller turns on their profit margin, but it's a lot quicker. So the capital and the money moves faster. And these are all like business things that I've had to teach Matthew, because you have to make these decisions. Like there are some people who just buy cards for fun with their own money that they make from their job, and they sit on the card and it stays in their collection, and that's fine. Then there are folks like us who buy and sell cards and don't put our pocket money into that. We only put our card profit into that, and then we get our personal collection with our proceeds. And then there are guys who, quite frankly, don't have PCs. They just flip cards all the time, and they're just kind of middlemen or vendors or whatever. And so you kind of have to understand the market. We got a raw look into that at Chantilly. A lot of the vendors, a lot of the big card guys, we all know each other, you know, and these guys understand who does what. And they say, well, this guy buys this, or this guy's the guy to go to for that. And so the more that you can get involved and understand, you know, where the market is and where the buyers are and where the sellers are, you can position yourself to kind of take advantage of that with your own strategy.
Speaking of raw, some new raw cards we picked up at the Wilmington card show. We can go through it right now.
So it's harder and harder and harder, in my opinion, to find clean raw cards. So when you do, you kind of have to get them, because when you grade a raw card, you're going to see your biggest jump in profit, and that's still a huge part of, you know, what we do in the hobby. So here's one.
Skeens Refractor. I mean, what did he do against the Braves last night? 9 strikeouts. I mean, he's
Paul
just
Skeens
crushing
is
it.
Kind of the next pitching phenom. That's his refractor auto.
Will Levis Optic downtown. Picked this one up. Picked all these up at the show yesterday, but I had to pay strong for it, but it looks pretty good. Next one, Anthony Edwards Genesis. I mean, this dude was getting comparisons to Michael Jordan about 2 weeks ago, and then he lost out to the Nuggets, but still a beautiful card. Next, we have Walker Jenkins, our boy, and that is his True Blue Bowman auto. Next, we have a Josu DePaula True Gold. Josu's a young stud for the Dodgers, but think he will be really good, and I hope that one's going to PSA 10. Lazaro, our other boy. We have tons of Lazaro. That's his True Gold raw. Next up, we have a Walker Gold. Walker's our boy, local kid, True Gold. And last but not least, looking like the MVP right now, Gunnar Henderson Gold. Bowman, rookie
Gunnar or Judge. So what we are doing right now, and this is kind of more my strategy, because I don't have as much margin. I'm buying bigger. We're buying bigger cards. So right now, our average card purchase is probably in the $1,000 range. And we're buying cards in that $800 to $1,500 raw, hoping to grade them. You grade them faster. You're going to grade them express, and you're going to get them back in a couple of weeks. And if they PSA 10, you've got, you know, a decent margin there. Whereas previously we were buying, you know, $100, $200, $300 cards. Now we've kind of sold out the majority of our inventory and are only dealing with probably 30 or 40 cards at a time. Is that right?
I mean, that's what we're doing mostly now. Just Ham House is really focusing on buying high-end raw and seeing what we can do there.
And so Matthew, like I said, we kind of split Ham House Sports and kind of took, you know, our last year's collection and kept that with PC, vintage, as well as our Bowman prospects we're keeping. And then little Matt started out with $400.
$400.
And is getting close to 20K.
I think
and total inventory cards
away. So I'm going to try to get there before the National, and then go to the National ready to turn that into 50.
So let's talk about local shows, Matthew. So the Wilmington show yesterday, I think you going in, we're going like,
Yeah, I mean, going in, the Wilmington show is always like, okay, like, you know, you'll find some case hits here, find some case hits there, but nothing special. And I was kind of bummed coming off Chantilly, because Chantilly was not that great, right? All the repackers, buying all the cards. Couldn't really get any deals on the Bowman. Kind of bummed. Going to the Wilmington show, made a lot more deals than I thought I was going to buy. I mean, all of these
What do you
cards,
think you overall spent yesterday?
Yesterday?
The last 2 days.
You know?
No.
Oh, $10,000.
You think a total of 10? And
that's in the past 2 weeks, I think I've spent over 20K.
In the past 2 weeks?
I think so.
You think so?
Yeah, and like, I mean, I also picked up.
But what do you think you've
all these cards?
What do you think you've made on that?
The past 2 weeks, I think like probably $2,500 to $3,000.
And that doesn't include your grading stuff.
No, but I think on this is where my money's at. I think, because I mean, I paid strong for these lots, But I mean, if this card Gems alone is $2,500 card, so I think this is where the money's going to be at. But I think yesterday was one of my biggest buying days I've ever had.
You're doing lower margins, a lot more turns, and trying to get your percentages.
I mean, so basically yesterday I had a deal where I bought a bunch of downtowns and I sold them all at the show. But with that money, I took and I put it into like another lot, and I put it into another lot, and I ended up buying probably about 4 big lots at the show, and I kept the really clean ones I wanted to grade, and I sold all the slabs and the other ones I didn't really want to grade.
Yeah. So again, just giving you an insight into kind of how Matthew's moving in his, and mine's very different. I'm buying the higher end Bowman, and I'm usually buying 2 or 3 of them. I'm grading them. I'm selling off one of them to pay for, reduce my cost in the ones that I hold. And so that's kind of been my strategy on both. So right now, when you look at prospects, we're holding Samuel Basallo, Walker Jenkins, Lazaro Montez, and Xavier Isaac, and James Wood. Those 5 prospects we're holding, and we're kind of holding long-term. And we've got probably somewhere in the neighborhood of about $3,000 of inventory in each one of those guys.
And so some more though.
Well, Walker's a little bit more now because we still haven't moved. But my point being is we're kind of in a spot where we've got 4 or 5 prospects. We've probably tied up about $15K in market value. But the good news is we're probably only into those for probably $5 to $7K.
Yeah. Speaking of local show pickups, that's cool.
Oh yeah, check this out.
Yeah. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, 1972 Topps on card auto. Don't know if you can see the auto, but it's there. It's there. You can't really see it because of the auto. I've had so many people tell me yesterday, "Oh, his auto's bad."
It's bad.
Yeah, like it's just like not good. It's like
it's cool. It just says Abdul-Jabbar.
Yeah.
You're saying because he signed it on the side where his body is. Yeah, it's still sick. I mean, there. How many of them?
30 only graded.
Pop 30. So there's only 30 of those graded. 72 Topps Kareem with his auto on it. I think it's awesome.
Yeah.
So gearing up for the National, Matthew, we're going to wrap up here. Gearing up for the National. Last year, National was just overwhelming.
Yeah, it was great. Last year's National. I'm not expecting it to be anything similar, but I'm hoping that it's somewhat around the same because, I'm walking in, I'm doing the football and the baseball, so I think I kind of have a good thing going there because a lot of people just do the Bowman or they just do the football. So they don't know really like what to do, but I think that doing both kind of helps me out there. And if I can buy 3 big football cards going in National to bring in, that's my only goal.
That's your goal?
That's my goal. To get about 3 big football cards and 3 big Bowman cards to take into the show floor and move those.
Well, I'm looking as far as Ham House Sports with our PC to really up our vintage deal. We're looking for a 1951 Bowman Mantle, a 1951 Bowman Mays. We're looking for a 1933 Gowdy Ruth right now. Those are 3 cards we've never owned. And so we're trying to take, some of the money we've made to buy these cards for our personal collection and keep some nice vintage in our PC long term. So I'm looking forward to the Natty because we're going to have a lot of cash, and opportunities to get those kinds of cards. But you're having to pay stronger for vintage now. Well,
especially at the National because everybody with vintage is like 18% over comps or 18 million % over comps.
So all that said, I just want to continue to encourage people because when you see guys like us that they show their cards, these big cards or whatever, there's a lot of folks that can kind of get discouraged or whatever. Like, I could never have that card. I was talking to a guy last night and he was like, I'd love to get an Eddie Murray PSA 10 rookie card, which is a low pop rookie card because of the year it was. And I think there's only like 30 of them or something. And it's like $30K. Right.
Yeah.
And he's like, I'll never get there. I was like, dude, don't say that. I was like, you will. And he's like, the most expensive card I've done right now is like $1,300. I was like, well, that's fine. Just keep going, keep growing. I remember when we bought our first $100 card. I remember when we bought our first $500 card.
I remember when we bought our first $100 card. It broke my foot.
Yeah. It's like, it's crazy because like things just continue to grow. And so my biggest encouragement to you all is just to make sure you still love the hobby. There's times when Matthew and I don't love it. It gets a little bit boring. It gets a little bit mundane. You're dealing with people. You're dealing with a lot of emotions. You get grumpy, dealers at shows that want to give you a hard time. You get, people lowballing. We got scammed. We got scammed twice, last month. Had to go through PayPal to get our money back from, there's all kinds of stuff about the hobby. You can get wrapped up in, these accounts that like to call people out in the hobby or make fun of this person or make fun of that. But do the hobby because you love it, and find something that you love and just keep going, but be smart about it. And if you're smart about it and you love it, it can become something that's really unique and special, like what Matthew and I've gotten to experience. And now we get to go to shows. We get to connect with so many people. People continue to, tell us how much they love the content and sticking around and watching. And so it's just been a lot of fun. But stay encouraged, kind of keep pushing through. And as always, if we can help you guys with anything, do not hesitate to reach out.
Hamhouse Sports on Instagram. Shoot us a message.
All right, guys. Peace.
Peace.